Hello and welcome to week 10 of the FUT Weekly Podcast. It's a content pod. There's a lot to get through, as there has been in recent weeks, which is quite convenient because we've slimmed down the number of guests so we can get a bit deeper into things, and also because it's actually a little bit of a nightmare to organise a podcast recording on the day of an England match. Who'd have thought it, eh? But we have Japes. Welcome.
Thank you much, Ben. Feeling like a new man now that the World Cup's in full swing. And, well, actually, my ultimate team has not improved. Before we start, I'm going to just my big thought of the week is I tend to force myself into using untradeable players, even when I know getting someone like 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀 or paying for some of these new World Cup FUT heroes would drastically improve my team and probably improve my results. I have just 1.3 million liquid and I just keep buying packs because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. It feels like a problem. Maybe it's not. I don't know. It's like an existential crisis for me at the moment.
These guaranteed ones with the ratings in the store, I don't know whether that's having a good impact on my team at all. But it's tempting.
Here's the thing, Ben. When they include something like that, I find myself being like, if I were going to build an SBC from scratch, how would I go about this? How much do I think it might cost me for some of these, right? And then I'm sort of like, it's not even that bad of a value.
Yeah, I totally get it. And actually, I was going to talk about this, which I will. I did the Ribery SBC. But let's get into introducing our next guest, who is a regular around these parts now, Josh, aka SpreadsheetFIFA. Welcome back to the pod.
Thank you very much. Fresh off the glorious 6-2 win against the mighty Iran. I'm happy to be here.
Are you hoping that Wales wins or that the US wins? Do people in England think of Wales as we'll root for them a little bit, I suppose?
I have to say, as someone who is half Welsh.
Oh, you're half Welsh? Okay.
Yes. My father's from Swansea, so it's been deep in the family history. So, I've always had a little bit of an inkling for the Welsh, obviously. But I feel like Wales, yes, they do get a bit of support. I feel like Scotland, I think because they so hate us.
Yeah,
Wales dislike us. Scotland actively hate us.
Yeah.
I think that it's less likely. So I think it'll be one that people will watch. I don't know if they're going to necessarily have a side, but you tend to pick one at the beginning of a match. I'll obviously be supporting a Welsh, but it's two English-speaking nations. How often does that happen that aren't England playing each other?
Yeah, I mean, 3 in one group is quite rare. But I was going to say, in terms of Wales versus USA, I would be normally supporting Wales, I think, but actually being over in the US, knowing a lot of people now in the US, I think probably supporting US, want to keep the buzz alive a bit longer, I guess. But actually, talking of buzz, there's suddenly been a buzz around Path to Glory. The prices have increased significantly. I mean, Grealish was 90 odd K, and now people are like, oh, there's a World Cup on, and he's increased to 120 because England were playing, but it's happening with quite a few other players as well. Obviously, the upgrade potential of these is pretty nice, but that's some way away. Before we talk pound for pound, when I was looking for mine, I was just looking at these and thinking, some rises, some fluctuation going to happen for sure.
Cards that change are always great for investment, be that ones to watch, Path to Glories. They're always ripe for investment. As we kind of do this, Senegal and Netherlands are playing, and every time someone has an attack, if you are on the 59th minute, you just watch a page of 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦s or Frenkie de Jongs just disappear as people try and get in there quickly. So it's always been something, even, is it Plata, the Ecuadorian one? He was discard for the whole of last week, and then the moment the game kicked off, he went to 14k, and then they started winning. I think he was selling for 17.5k at one point. They do tend to shift around. I think that's why quite a lot of people enjoy cards that change in value based on real world events, because they are good for investment. They're interesting to track the price of. I think a few of them are a little overpriced, especially considering how long it'll be before you see the expected upgrades. But they've changed an awful lot.
Actually, before we dive into talking about Path to Glory squad, things like that, we can do our pound for pound nominations, because I think that might be something that brings up a few of these. And actually, before that, I did miss putting out the poll this week for last week's pound for pound. So I'll let our guests here, even though they probably nominated them, so there's probably a bit of a conflict of interest here, to pick the winner. We had Path to Glory Lukaku, we had Path to Glory Delaney, we had the World Cup hero Mascherano and World Cup hero Park Jae-sung. Who would you like to go for, Josh? Who would you pick? I guess I get the deciding vote.
Having used Park Ji-sung. I'm gonna assign myself in that court. He's Hullet gang player. I got the chance to use him in a draft actually, and really, really enjoyed him. He's obviously kind of United fans would talk about him as Three Lung Park, and he really just does that on the pitch, especially with the way that pressing has kind of been nerfed a little bit with the stamina. You really feel that he doesn't really slow down for the entirety of the match, just really solid at everything. His dribbling is absolutely superb across the board. And I feel like, especially in the middle of the park, I don't know whether the patch has changed this. I think it was the same before. It's why I like that 𝗵𝗫 road to the knockouts. The ability to turn quickly and kind of take the ball on the half turn and just move away from pressure. Yeah, so I don't know who nominated him, but I'm all aboard the Park Ji-sung boat.
Yeah, I can't actually remember myself, so I've got the list of players, but not who nominated. But yeah, it's a good one. Also, he has 88 defensive awareness, and that's pretty impressive base stat. It's also interesting because, I don't know, having watched him play, Josh, he was never really a midfield player in a three. Most people I see playing him are playing him as part of a midfield three. He mainly played out wide. He did play in the centre a bit, but if he did play in the centre, he'd play like behind the striker, really.
Yeah.
To press the pivot. So it feels interesting, like the way that he's being used, and actually his stats suggest he's a better kind of box-to-box in a three than you'd think based on his playing career.
Yeah, I'm going to get absolutely crucified for this, but he was kind of like Roberto Firmino before Roberto Firmino in that sense, in that Fergie tended to use him a lot. When me and Fergie were mates, we just talk about each other like that. But Sir Alex Ferguson used to use him quite a lot in tough games to kind of shut down a very key way of playing out for the opposition. Usually, as you say, it was the pivot at the back. Sometimes it would be to press if they had a wing back that tended to push on a bit. But he was kind of like a utility man across the front line. But I always felt he was used more in a defensive manner. Obviously, FIFA doesn't necessarily lend itself to that in the same way because, Kylian Mbappe can still go and press and take the ball off somebody. It doesn't really matter what his defensive stats are. But yeah, it's interesting to see him be used more in midfield.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, that's a complaint I've seen a lot about the current game, the fact that forward players press so effectively. The defensive stats of Park, for example, are kind of wasted to some extent. But if you put him in the midfield three, then he's obviously very useful. Anyway, nice little extended discussion there. Wasn't expecting that, but that's fine. 𝗫𝗫s, what about you? Would you like to go for anyone else?
No, I'm fully on Team Park, and I think I do remember indeed who suggested him.
Was it you? Yeah, I was thinking, was it you actually?
Yeah, it's because I not his World Cup hero one, but I packed his other one, and I was sort of like, this dude's a baller.
He's very good.
Like very, very surprising. He's super, super dominant in the midfield.
Did you actually nominate his regular version rather than the?
Yeah, I think I nominated his regular version because I got that wrong. I hadn't used his World Cup one, but I think the difference between the two is not that much. And I will say that the regular one's like 80 something K now. It's like such a bargain. It's like +1, +2 maybe in stats. And to call out not just like the defensive awareness, but his base one has 80 interceptions. And if you put a hawk on him, like I do, you get up to 90 acceleration, 88 sprint speed. And then you get also some like meaty, like close to 90 in both shot power and long shots. And more importantly, he's got the 95 stamina and 90 aggression with that setup. And I love high aggression on midfielders. I think it makes all the difference in the world. So he's just a no-brainer. Like high work rates, like you just can't go wrong. Put him in, he does the job.
Yeah, we can move on to actually this week's pound for pound suggestions and a hero to start things off as well. This is a World Cup version. Macca going for World Cup Tim Cahill. Card can play, and I didn't know this, striker, centre forward, cam, or centre mid. And he's choosing to play him as the box-to-box centre mid. The card has ℎ7 pace, more than enough for centre mid, which allows you to get creative with chem styles. I chose Powerhouse, brings his defending up to an acceptable standard and boosts vision to 94 and short passing to 95. This to go with already strong dribbling and other standout stats such as 90 finishing, 91 reactions, and 96 aggression, 𝗫𝗫s. What else could you want? A true box-to-box. There are two more stats which stand out, however, 99 jumping and 99 heading. I've never used a card this strong in the air. Even CR7 scored a corner every other game in Weekend League before I had always passed them short. A real extra weapon in your arsenal for those tight games. Originally only played him to try him out, but all of this for 50k and goes into any team on 3chem. Give him a go. And actually, as there are three of us on this podcast, I can do another listener suggestion, and this one is NJ Renegade going for Flashback David Silva. Wasn't expecting this actually, but yeah, he says with the explosive buff, or basically the dribbling buff, he's positively rapid and incredibly smooth on the ball, finesse and outside the boot traits. Spanish La Liga links can be easy to build chem up on him. One of my all-time favourites, and while I hope he gets a bigger, shinier card later, this definitely scratches the itch for the little Spanish centurion. There's two to start us off. How can you follow that, Josh? You got anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to go for another World Cup hero. I was going to go down the American route and pander to the audience, but I'm gonna stick with the World Cup heroes, and I'm gonna go with Freddie Ljunberg, however you want to say it.
He's a pain to play against. Honestly, like I've found him really awkward to play.
He's 80k.
Yeah,
he's incredibly cheap, and with the dribbling buff that we had, he is just unbelievable. Now, I packed his base hero when in the whole hero pack debacle, and really loved using him. I've used him on both sides of the pitch, and just thought he was superb, really solid. Always the last attacker that I took off if I was kind of subbing off attackers. And I've been using this World Cup hero recently, and he's just that, but better. And I like, for again, Premier League, giving the extra 2 links for 80k. I'm like, his price is just mental to me. He's got everything you could want. Like, his physicals are fairly strong for a winger. You know, you don't necessarily want an absolute behemoth out there, especially with kind of dribbling being as good as it is. But with an engine, he just has really good stats across the board, and has, you know, outside the foot shot trait, which means you can still hit those 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏s in the same way you did before. I love him. I think he's superb.
Yeah, he's one of those players that you look at him, you're like, 81 composure, 82 balance, you know, it's not looking especially amazing. But then when you play him in game, also medium work rates, which I don't always enjoy, but playing him in game, clearly he has a lot going for him. I think maybe the 77 strength and 76 aggression is, you know, it doesn't look outstanding, but actually compared to a lot of fullbacks, it probably gives him the edge. He feels a lot more physical than I'd expected. And he also has high stamina, decent jumping. I guess he's not the shortest. Also, an interesting thing that I've noticed, you know, if you have a slightly smaller player, like he's 5'9", but has decent weight, he's like 73 kilos. I actually find that can give players a bit more ability to hold off defenders, just because I guess they have that mass, and that gives them an advantage.
Fat shaming Freddie Ljunberg here. What's going on?
Well, actually, a fun thing about Freddie Ljunberg. I mean, I only came across this coming over here, but they have this. It's like a. Have you ever watched this, Japes? It's like a goal show that covers the Champions League.
Mm-hmm.
And basically,
the
Freddie Ljunberg
yeah.
And he's like the kind of color commentator, if you like, for that. You know, he's in the studio, but he's commentating on the games, and he's really good in that. So
the coverage with like Michael Richards, Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher, is like pretty entertaining.
Yeah, really good that, and also enjoy Ljungberg's Cockney Swedish accent, or not that Cockney, but not that Swedish either. Anyway, over to you, Japes.
I guess I found myself a little bit surprised that I was going this route. I got him in my red picks. The new inform Moise Kean is kind of silly.
Oh, yeah.
He's 86 rated and is a 92 rated striker in game with a hunter chem. And he is selling for like just over 20k.
That's mad.
With a hunter, he has 99 sprint speed, 98 acceleration, and then 95 attacking positioning, 96 finishing, 98 shot power. He's got 94 base strength. Is 6 foot, high medium, like above 8. Like his worst dribbling stat, he's got 80 composure, which less than ideal, but worst dribbling stat beyond that is 83 in reactions, and then it's 85 in agility, and which is for a striker his size and his pace with that strength level is kind of a wild combination. So for me, that's exceptional pound for pound value.
Yeah, I mean, it's testament to the introduction of a bigger boost for Team of the Week featured players. They go up higher, but they also get that skill move and weak foot boost too.
Yeah, that's right. He's 4-star as well. And his gold card is 3-star. So
yeah. No, that's good.
Meaty.
And actually, Bentenke benefited from that as well. I was going to say, in terms of my own pound for pound, it was tricky. I think there's a lot of options out there. I was looking at Ramsey, looks very good for the time spent. I mean, you can basically do it while doing other things without much effort at all, apart from perhaps the league element of it. But that's, pretty straightforward. you can do that while doing your squad battle swaps tokens without too much problem. And then there is also 𝘵𝘀𝗀, who, again, a path to glory, the same price as fodder 86 rated on the market, so a bit of a no-brainer there. And also 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘐, I think, even though, he's not, fodder price is well above that, there is some risk there. Although we don't know the result of the game today, I think, USA do have a chance of qualifying, of course, and he's a Premier League player, 4-star, 4-star. The stats do look pretty strong, actually. And yeah, Japes, have you got him? Are you trying him?
Yeah, I've picked him up. I haven't used him yet, but I sort of thought 80K, like, if I were to open a 100K pack, would I be pretty excited to get Christian Pulisic? Like, I think so. That's my new barometer, Ben. When I'm talking about just like picking up players in promos, it's like, would I be excited if I had this player untradeable from a 100K pack? If the answer is yes, then I don't open the 100K pack and instead I just buy the player.
Yeah. That's good. I love that advice. That's good.
But I think he's good. I think the real thing we're looking for here is, can we get that meaty upgrade to Destino, Sergio Dest one-to-watch card? Let's not forget about the one-to-watch boost potentials coming up here from the World Cup.
Sterling having already got his.
Yeah, Sterling for sure.
For Dest, it's much bigger, isn't it? Because it's
Dest is going to be
overall
substantial if he gets that.
Yeah.
So I think we're, all of us that did that, I don't know if it was an SPC or an objective, but whoever did it, we're pumped about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pulisic, it's a card that you sort of look at and you're like, if this card, like in, I don't know, Team of the Year comes out, like USA gets no upgrades, how much is that card worth? You're probably like, it's maybe worth like 60K for a bit, 50K for a bit, and it'll eventually get down to like discard, but it's going to go slowly. So while the World Cup fever is going on, you might as well do it. And if USA wins one match, that's up over 100K, no question.
Yeah, even if they just go ahead tonight, it will absolutely rock it.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, actually, these prices clearly are so impacted by how much of a favourite their team is. I mean, Papu Gomez is so expensive for what he is when you compare Pulisic to Gomez. Yeah? The difference isn't huge. I mean, I would say Gomez is still the better unupgraded item between the two, but Papu Gomez is just someone people think is going to get at least the 5-star weak foot, possibly the 5-star skills, and therefore he is 560K, which is just so much higher. And you could say the same about Goretzka maybe to some extent, and maybe I guess Nkunku possibly the case there too, although he's so expensive. I think people, are also backing him as a good player, which he obviously is in game. He's going to be very, very good with the 5-star skills already. It's worth noting if a player already has 5-star skills like he does, or let's say Milinkovic-Savic, who has the 5-star weak foot, they actually get an extra upgrade instead of the upgrade to their weak foot or skills, an extra upgrade to their overall, which is quite nice. So that could be something to look out for, a little extra boost for those players. Anything else you wanted to mention about the team, Josh, or the Path to Glory players?
Just that we didn't get a extra release on Sunday. We didn't get the extra 3 players, which we tend to get in promos. We usually get those kind of extra 3 players just added in. I think we had Osorio, Zakaria, and somebody else last week, and it just didn't happen this Sunday, which I found quite interesting. Maybe Lozano and Boufal were supposed to be the extra players, and that's why they were coming out as base cards, but because they'd advertised on their tweet that they were in packs, they've now said it's a mistake. So maybe it was them, because I think Aldosari may have come out last night, although I feel like I'd seen his card before.
No, I think you're exactly right. Basically what happened was, on Friday, they accidentally included Lozano and Boufal in the graphic for the Path to Glory release on Friday, and they weren't actually in packs. They've said they're going to compensate people who packed them during that period because they thought they're in packs because they're on the splash screen, I think it was. So they then obviously had already released them when it came to Sunday, when they were supposed to be released. And so you only saw Aldosari rather than the 3 players. And I think that's what went on. I'd look out actually for dips on those players when the compensation happens. It's possible that there's too much supply almost and they drop, way too low. But if they're doing well in competition at the time and look likely to go through either of them, then, that's very promising. And Boufal, basically, he was fodder price previously, maybe a bit higher now. But as I mentioned earlier, he could be worth a look. I was thinking in terms of a pound for pound nomination, controversially, I'd almost go, do you know what? End of an era Ribery, before the patch, was a good player. But post-patch, with the changes to dribbling, I think he's exceptional and someone that for the 400, 500k, when you consider Neymar's price at 300k and the fact that this is a unique player, potentially you could argue better shooting and passing stats certainly, and much better stamina, which I think is going to be important for keeping him on in the game. And Neymar is better in terms of his dribbling, at least the stats, and he has that kind of uniqueness. But Ribery has that too, and Ribery is shorter. He's got that low centre of gravity. I'm not sure it matters too much. And I've used him, found him fantastic, and using him with a hunter, his dribbling still felt really good. And I do think, even for the price, is slightly undervalued.
Maybe it's the Rule Breakers, because the Rule Breakers is just over 500,000, and the End of an Era is just under 500,000. I think there's about a 50k difference between them. Now, obviously, you can take some of that price off with stuff you have in your club. They're the same rating. They're very, very similar cards. One's central base, one's only on the left wing. So maybe it was I feel like they've probably got the price about right. For me, I would sooner, like, let's say you've got half of the fodder and you're going to spend 250k on the fodder to complete him. Just as if you've got the coins, go and buy the Rule Breakers, try it out. If you really, really love it, then go and complete the SBC. You don't have too long left on it. But
in fairness, there is about a week to go, so a decent amount of time. But the one thing I would say about him is it's amazing how much better, actually, when you look at the stats, the End of an Era is, despite them being the same rating. He's got +10 agility, +7 reaction, slightly higher composure and stamina, but also +9 vision, +7 short passing, +6 long passing. He can actually take free kicks, which the other version arguably can't because the stats are too low. So I think he is better. And also, although, yes, that central version, if you like, the Rule Breakers, can play striker, can play cam, centre forward, it can't play wide. So there is some advantage there to being left wing, left mid, depending on your team. And I think the stats are balanced with that old meta of avoiding explosive players in mind, where obviously the End of an Era is perfect and was released before the patch. So they probably haven't considered that, I think, in the pricing.
Yeah, he was one of those, let's just get rid of his agility.
Exactly. I guess he's the type of player that I'm saying, if you've got the fodder, if he's a player you're going to like I did, I was not sure about it, but having used him over the weekend, he did really well for me and is absolutely someone I'd recommend and say, if you're considering it, just go and do it. You'll have fun. You'll enjoy him. And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, agreed. 5.5's the longevity. Whoa.
See, I'm having such a hard time with Ribery because, like, obviously he was standout for Bayern for years, and I have a real soft spot for him. I just sort of look at this SBC and it just feels like a coin sink for me.
Interesting.
Even I don't see a world where I feel like Ribery, like what you have to pay for him, you're going to be interested in keeping him in your squad for that long. He feels like a novelty for like one weekend league, and then you're going to go back to something else. But I think that maybe is in some, like, I haven't really used a lot of small nippy players like that. And like, I don't, it's not that I don't think small nippy players are good. And, I need to try wide formations again with this patch, but it just feels, I just am having a hard time thinking to myself, like, yeah, this is a card that I'm going to want to spend 500k on and have in my team until team of the year.
Well, yeah, although he's focal to my team now, but the great thing about him is he's going to be a very effective wide player. If you end up just having him to start and then subbing him off or even using him as a substitute, he's going to be really effective, I think, in lots of different roles. And he does have a bit more physicality than you'd expect. Also, post-patch, Brolin and Best were great for me. So I was thinking he must be good, and he has been. 14 games, 21 goals and 9 assists in champs, which is, really good.
I also think it's worth noting you're playing the false nine, which like funnels goals to the center forward. Not that he's not capitalizing on them, but I love a good agree to disagree. The last one for me is that he is only a left wing, left mid, which just kills longevity for me.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that Brolin and Best have a lot of positional flexibility, actually. So it allows me to just pop in there and keep him there. Anyway, I don't want to labour the point because I think he's been ideal for me, and that's not always going to be the case. But if you're considering it, I would go for it. I would, in hindsight, probably pay more for the SBC having used him. And I was actually wavering over doing it. It's not something I often do, spending this much on an SBC at this stage. But yeah, he's very, very good. We should move on to some other things. And I think the first thing to move on to is, the content has been flowing to some extent. There's been some criticism. But one thing it's hard to really say was good was that first Showdown SBC, which we had. Hopefully, there's some more tempting ones in the future. But it was Diallo and 𝗏𝗏𝗏 who, aren't maybe the most inspiring options because of their stats.
Yeah, I felt like they were disappointing. I felt like they were both probably one rating too low. I think if you add a +2 to either of them, it looks like it's going to be 𝘵𝗍𝗏𝗏 now. They are now more interesting, and they were really cheap. But we seem to be getting a lot more of these really cheap mid-level SBCs this year. Kind of like you were saying with Ribery, you could throw him in your team maybe for some, rivals games during the week, but is probably not going to get into your weekend league squad. I think the dynamic duos are very similar, like the Welsh dynamic duos we got over the weekend. I think it's one of those where I'd have liked to see them potentially just have a slightly bigger upgrade if they win. I don't know. They're both a little bit. They're okay. But 𝗏𝗏𝗏's going to get this +2. He's probably going to go to 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦, being Dutch, obviously. And he has some nice links, but it's just he's 3-star, 4-star. I don't know that anyone's going to be that fussed about him, even if they did him and have now got an 87 rated card for the 20k or whatever that it cost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, with these SBCs, and it's something I noticed a bit last year as well, during Team of the Season, ultimately, and we'll talk about some stuff later, which I think this is relevant to as well, EA obviously have the stats in terms of completions of SBCs, right? So they do know whether people are doing these. And, personally, I'm not interested in it. I don't think it's great content for me, but I guess there will be people out there. Maybe you're a Senegal fan or a Dutch fan who doesn't have that many coins, doesn't have a particularly strong squad. Maybe you play squad battles, and that's some content. Not that you can't make good coins playing squad battles, but you can't compared to a lot of other things you can do in the game. And these are the types of players that I guess are worth them picking up. It allows them to get content through SBCs and things, and maybe to gamble on a card which maybe they couldn't afford a Path to Glory Dutch player like De Jong, and now they can get the Showdown. So I guess it makes sense in some ways, but it's not that exciting. But.
I mean, we had 𝘵𝘀𝘀 before,
oh wait, we did, yeah, he was
SBC.
quite reasonable.
So yeah. I think that Diallo is a great selection.
Yeah,
plays in a big league, right? 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is just, I don't know. I guess there are other maybe selections that I would have liked to have seen from especially because you get there's such like a limited upgrade here. And maybe they're saying, you know what? We think that we might want to do a Netherlands Showdown later on in the tournament. We're going to save I don't know if it's 𝘭𝘃𝗀 or 𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘃 Showdown card until later on, something like that. Or we don't know what other players they have because I know there are ultimately like some other card designs that we don't really know too much about at this point. Like, I get it, but it just felt a little like meh. I would have rather 𝘵𝗫𝗀𝗀 still plays for the national team, doesn't he?
Yeah, a really juiced pace 𝘵𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀.
A really juiced pace 𝘵𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀 would have been kind of a fun card. Like, give me something more novel. Like, I don't know if I've ever looked at a 𝘵𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀 card and been like, dude, I got to do this card.
Yeah.
Even someone like 𝗫𝗏𝗂, he's not a starter for the national team, but
yeah, give 𝗫𝗏𝗂 or Denzel Dumfries, man. Give him because he's a baller for the national team.
Yeah, because he's a centre back, isn't he?
But I guess he just didn't he get a rule breakers or something?
Yeah, but it was a centre back though, so it kind of makes sense.
That's a lot of use. Nathan Ake, has he had a special card recently?
I think he's got a World Cup Stars card, doesn't he? I think he's the Dutch World Cup stars for the swaps.
Yeah, he is actually. And it's funny. Already we see loads of players already being used. It's kind of funny. I know people complain about the same players coming up again, but honestly, so many players get special items. It's mad.
Could have given us a Wout Weghorst. They missed the opportunity.
Yeah, Wout. People would have been hyped about that card too. That would have been a good way to start World Cup. Also a nod to like last year's cycle. It's a great shout. spoti.fi. Oh, 𝘵𝗫𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 has scored. Unbelievable. What a worthwhile Showdown pick.
𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 hate, and then there we go.
What a worthwhile Showdown
We should move on to some quick thoughts on the World Cup content so far, but does anyone want to give a quick shout out to a player, before we move on from this completely?
I do want to just quickly shout out someone who was in my pound for pound running, but didn't make it just because I think he's maybe slightly too expensive for a pound for pound, which is the 𝗵𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗍𝗏 Path to Glory card. He's always been a player I've loved to use in FIFA. Just his size, he's always had decent skill moves and weak foot. I think this Path to Glory card is 4.5. Serbia are an odd one. They've now got a team that has the potential to do quite well. And even if they just get out of what is admittedly a tough group, he goes up to a 90 rated centre mid and will be close to 𝘭𝑪𝘬𝘐, but with like ridiculous stats everywhere. Like his shooting's unbelievable. His passing's already superb. His agility and balance is low, but he's 6'3". What more do you want? And his defending and physicality are already really solid as well. So he's kind of like one of those, you could literally play him wherever you want on the pitch. So keep an eye out for him if Serbia start doing well. I think he could have a decent price rise, especially if Mitrovic and Vlahovic can get going. They could be interesting to watch.
So yeah, he's actually the most valuable tradable player I've packed because I packed him over the weekend and ended up trying him, and he's very good. I mean, I used his inform quite a bit as well, so I was already interested in him. And yeah,
I'm going to throw another really odd one out there. Brozovic.
Yes.
That card is sneaky good.
His stats are very interesting. Yeah,
and he's got that. I mean, his dribbling stats paired with his defensive stats and his physical stats, high aggression, high stamina base player, already has close to 90 passing. I think, if he gets if he starts getting any type of upgrade, this all of a sudden is a card that is like, whoa, okay. I see you.
I know what you mean. Yeah. He does it really good. I was tempted to pick him up just almost as sort of insurance because I could see Croatia doing, they've got previous, don't they? They could easily go on and do something good.
What I think's funny about him though is Brozovic is one of those players that every time I look at his stats and start to get excited about it, I just then think about him and this is like an odd perception for whatever reason, but I just think he's an incredibly boring pick for your club or your squad.
Yeah.
In general. Like, there's literally nothing to get excited about. You're like, yeah, he's really nice stats as a defensive midfielder, really well-rounded.
Well, maybe a 5-star if they do what they did last World Cup, get to the final. That would happen and that would be exciting. But talking of excitement, let's move on to talking about World Cup content overall. There's been an interesting phenomenon almost where I'm seeing plenty of negativity from some content creators around World Cup content, and it's slightly unclear, I think, to listeners having asked thoughts, where that really comes from, I suppose. For example, Gary says, I find it strange we are having a conversation about World Cup content, more content than you can shake the proverbial at. How long does it take to scroll through to see how many games you've won for swaps? There's just so much content. I like the promo as a whole. There's so much to do, says Grog. I've barely put a dent in the swaps objectives so far. I think that they've given every nation involved some sort of special item with potentially more to come, and that's brilliant. Even some nations who competed in past World Cups have a card in the form of the World Cup hero. I get that not all of them are particularly great cards, but that's not the point of this promo. If the player SBCs and objectives don't appeal to you, then don't do it. It's as simple as that. We know there'll be plenty more to come in the coming weeks, so I can't really see the complaints towards the promo. And Springford points out we've got things like the dynamic duo squad battles, dynamic duo friendlies, World Cup swaps squad battles, World Cup swaps friendlies, Path to Glory Cup, Silver Lounge, Silver Cup. There's the Homegrown 11. We've seen there's a lot of gameplay content around, and I think people are a little confused as to why, with probably more gameplay and menu content than we normally get at this point in the cycle, there is this negativity around what's coming out from certain creators.
I agree with you. There is a lot to do. It's whether a lot of it is worthwhile doing. Like some of those dynamic duos, are they worthwhile doing to get these players who you're not really going to use? Is it worth going out of your way to go and play, as you say, squad battles, or having to make your team poorer to go into rivals just so you don't have to play squad battles to go and get those cards? I know that they're there if you want to do it, and if we're getting content, maybe we shouldn't complain about getting content, but it's about whether it's worthwhile doing. And I don't know if a lot of it is at this point, especially when, as you're saying, we're going to get, in fact, we have got now, because it has hit 6, we've got SBCs, loads of them. We've got so many SBCs, but there's no way that you can complete all of them. There's absolutely no way that you can get through and be able to use or go and complete all of those major SBCs without spending FIFA points or without spending a whole lot of coins, meaning you have to go and trade. So yeah, I know that it's a small section of the population that I'm flying the flag for in that respect, and there's still been good things, but it feels like to keep up that level of engagement that's required, I just feel like there's a few things that even just a repeatable League SBC, it wouldn't massively, if not many people grind it's not going to massively change the game, but it would mean so much to that section of the player base, and it's so simple to do.
The one thing I have seen people say, and I've seen a lot of concepts, and we should just say this outright so people are aware, we may have mentioned this last week, but the idea that the thing that's missing is like some kind of sticker book style collection of these World Cup type players. It just isn't going to happen. Like the licensing means that it can't happen. That's why you don't see players being called cards, you see them being called items. It's because there isn't the license for card collection. But I think the one thing I will say about this is, although it feels like a lot more content than we normally have around this time of the cycle, the swaps is great. I love the number of players. I love the fact they're covering all the nations. I think that's really good and something we should highlight. But you can maybe say some of the thinking doesn't feel super joined up, but there's maybe a bit of a lack of cohesion in terms of the different parts. It's a bit complex. Some of it's fiddly, and the pacing of these swaps tokens I don't feel is quite right. And I think for people playing more casually, even though there's plenty of content, maybe there's too much and it's hard to know what to do in a way for that reason. But maybe doing what you think is fun is fine, because actually you will get plenty back from doing that. So that's not too much of an issue. But we have to see how things go, because obviously the tournament's only just started, really.
Yeah.
Bear in mind also, World Cup traditionally, and I would imagine that's the case this year, even at the point at which it arrives in the cycle, has brought a lot of new players into the game, and that will mean content needs to be provided for those players with their lower coin totals, less fodder. You also can't necessarily put out continuously amazing content, because otherwise people see that as the norm and it becomes boring. Strangely, I've always felt, and I remember FUT economist Jamie being on the podcast and saying, well, sometimes I think that they do deliberately have a bit of a pause in the quality of content so that they can get you excited for what's coming next, which makes sense, a bit of a reset. But also, you don't want to have the power curve run away at this stage, because we are so early in the cycle, and that's a big disadvantage of the World Cup being now compared to in the past. The Euros part of the glory was so juiced up, and that worked really well. But Japes, any thoughts on this before we wrap up?
Yeah, I was just going to say with the not enough content or whatever, that EA just needed to release like a repeatable upgrade type deal. Like people love those, and they've gone and done it, and it seems to be decent value. So. Woohoo.
Oh, the double upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, the 80 plus double upgrade, repeatable, that type of thing. All of your like menu grinders, they're like here for it.
They are, but with no way to get the cards to put into it from a kind of sustainable place, whether that be League SBCs.
Yeah, you can do it endlessly.
Yeah, and I know that's such a niche, but I think I love the upgrades. I prefer the player picks to the upgrades, but I do love them.
I just like if you're grinding menus though, like you're probably spending time trading. I'm going to make an assumption here, but like if you're spending time trading and making coins, to me it's like just use your coins for upgrade cards. Like it's just more. You're just spending more time on menus.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I personally don't actually trade all that much. I'd much prefer the kind of menu grind, because I feel like I'm actively doing something rather than day trading. But yeah, I do totally get that. A lot of the proper menu grinders are big traders with millions of coins, and so yeah, go and use them for the upgrades. I agree. Just in terms of upgrades, we got an 86 plus team of the week upgrade for an 84 rated squad.
Yeah, I feel real quick. I feel like with that team of the week upgrade, to me, that just signals that there's going to be potentially a meaty SBC where you need team of the week cards again.
Potentially icons. If we might get a few of the World Cup icon SBCs.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And actually, with the fact that the champs rewards must be changing without team of the week, what are they going to be minimum rated gold rares, I heard, or something?
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be minimum rating. I don't know if we've got confirmation of exactly what that minimum rating will be in your picks. If you can work out what your champs record is, because obviously they added in in terms of content, they added in that counter.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
They've added in a counter that can't count, which is incredible.
That's lazy. That's lazy testing is all that is.
That really is. Actually, talking of champs, last weekend I used a false 9 formation. Had tried it previously, but before the patch it just didn't work. But it was so effective for me. Got me 16 wins. Was really enjoyable. Was rolling back a year to using it last cycle. It was so good, and I'm looking forward to talking about that on the Supporter Gameplay pod this week. It'll also eventually be on my Twitter at FUT Weekly Ben, and in the Tactic Bank in the Discord. So if you fancy supporting the pod, getting an extra podcast every week, then please do. Your support is greatly appreciated. Keeps the podcast going, and you get double the podcast. Just £3 a month to get an extra podcast every week, and you can do that just by searching Support FUT Weekly or by following the link in the description of this podcast. And on that, until the Gameplay podcast, we're ready to say our goodbyes. So thank you very much, Japes.
Cheers, Ben. Pleasure to be back on, and looking forward to diving more deeply into the World Cup as we progress along.
Looking forward to USA Wales. I know the listeners love a hindsight prediction where they can smugly know the result. So what do you think for Wales USA?
We'll go with all the USA fans will know what I'm talking about, even though it's not Mexico. 2-0,
which means
2-0. So US has had a knack for winning 2-0 over Mexico.
And yeah, Josh, why don't you give us a little prediction for that game?
Well, as a proud Welshman myself, I gotta go with the boys winning 2-0. Gareth Bale's rested. He's going to be in off that wing. It's going to be unbelievable. That's who's going to win it, honestly. Chris Gunter might come on and get a goal, even though he plays in League Two.
It was like Michael Sheen was on the pod. Love it.
I just did the 86 plus Team of the Week upgrade because I thought, why not? I've got a bunch of untradeable cards. I got Ben Yedder's 86 inform, and I have red Ben Yedder.
Of course. On that, that's where we should finish this podcast. Josh, thank you very much to you. You can find Josh at SpreadsheetFIFA on Twitter and various other places.
Yes.
Thank you, as always, to you listeners for joining us for this podcast. And if you'd like to subscribe, get these podcasts into your podcast feed, then you can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you're listening on YouTube, do subscribe, leave a like and a comment. The pod is newer to YouTube and it helps the algorithm a lot. Right. Thank you very much to all those supporters as well. As always, keeping the podcast going. If you'd like to do so, follow the link in the description or search Support FUT Weekly. A huge thank you to all of them and to those icon patrons. Dave B, 𝘬𝘃𝗲, Coach 𝘵𝑎𝑠, DJ FIFA Player, Alan G, Alistair, Anthony R, Dominic P, Rob P, Jeff B, Stephen F, Tom B, Damon H, David S, Nick Jack M, Eric T, Neil P, Adam G, Elliot M, Dan W, at Pace of a Tortoise, Roger D, Jake G, Springford, Nishant, Harry P, Alex M, Lee A, Brendan W, Andrew C, Joe W, Timothy J, Dylan, Adam R, Sam K, Graham W, Andy, Ads H2K, and Brian V. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add, though. FIFA's a bit like life, really. It has its many ups and its many downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.